this is the kind of the crucial, kind of almost binary difference, which produces an immense amount of psychological benefit. The moment you can really notice thoughts themselves as appearances in consciousness rather than what you are in each moment. Because what happens is, in the default case, the thoughts kind of creep up from behind us in some sense. They kind of come out of nowhere, and that just feels like me, right? So I'm trying to...
It's a reflexive identification. Well, you wouldn't act the damn things out if they didn't feel like you,
right.
And so they have to have that impulse to action in them that's part of felt identity.
Right. So
you're saying that, and this is part of, I suppose, part of the Buddhist tradition particularly, although not only, that being the puppet of those thoughts is part of what prolongs suffering, at least under some circumstances, especially being the puppet of them. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so this is, but the people, listening to us now can feel this. So, we're talking and people are trying to understand the thread of this conversation, but it's that they have a voice in their head that's competing with this, right? They're trying to listen to us, but they're also thinking, right? And so they might think, well, what the hell is he talking about, right? Like there's just some intrusive thought comes in, or like, oh no, wait a minute, he didn't answer the question. That thought, that feels, if you're identified with it, if you don't see it as mere language appearing in consciousness or mere imagery, right? It feels like me. It's like that is the self. That is
it also feels like what I believe.
Yeah,
and,
it's just
that's
there's
also
no space
extremely
around
interesting.
it.
Yeah, well, one of the things you do in clinical work all the time, especially in the cognitive behavioral field, is you help people identify those thoughts in some sense as objects, to no longer identify with them, and to say, just because you think that, it's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily you, and it's not necessarily helpful.
Yeah, and it does have this dreamlike character of both coming out of nowhere and completely seizing the reins of attention and identity and taking us elsewhere. And also we forget it. It has
that's part of the totalitarian spirit of rationality, that proclivity.
Well, but but a lot of these thoughts aren't rational. It's just you're just rehearsing your experience. It's just like, you'll tell yourself the same thing 10 times in a row and you won't be bored on the 10th time. You'll like, if you just imagine what it would be like to externalize your thoughts on a loudspeaker for everyone to listen to, and it was just helplessly, externalized. Every normal person would sound insane. Because of the perseveration and just the redundancy and the strange structure to the discursiveness. I mean, this is this is ever present. It's so ever present that it doesn't strike people as strange. But to be presuming we have a dialogue with ourselves as though the I could talk to the me. And that made any sense at all. It's like, I'm sitting here and getting set up for this interview, right? And I'll think, I got to get some water, right? Now, I know if I'm the one to say it and I'm the one to hear it, right? I know I need water. Who am I telling?
Yeah.
It's like I'm telling someone else.
A big habit that I'm working on, which is going to be really hard to explain in any way that any normal human being will understand this, but I'm trying to turn off my monkey mind. I think when we're born as children, we're pretty blank slates. We're living very much in the moment, and we're essentially just reacting to our environment through our instincts, and we're living in what I would call the real world. And then when puberty comes along, that's the onset of desire. It's the first time you really, really want something, and you start long-range planning for it. And then because of that, you start thinking a lot, and you start building an identity and ego to go and get what you want. And this is all normal and healthy. It's part of being the human animal. But I think at some point it gets out of control. And then we are constantly just talking to ourselves in our heads. We're playing little movies in our heads, walking down the street, but no one's actually there. Now, of course, we started voicing this thought in your head that you're always having, you'd be a madman and they'd lock you up. But the reality is, if you walk down the street and there are 1,000 people in the street, I think all 1,000 are talking to themselves in their head at any given point. They're constantly judging everything that they see. They're playing back movies of things that happened to them yesterday. They're living in fantasy worlds of what's going to happen tomorrow. And they're just pulled out of base reality. And that can be good when you're doing long-range planning. It can be good when you're solving problems. It's good for the survival and replication machines that we are. But I think it's actually very bad for your happiness. And so in my mind, the mind should be a servant or a tool, my master. It's not something that should be controlling me and driving me 24/7. So I've taken on this idea that I want to break the habit of uncontrolled thinking, which is hard, because if I say to you, don't think of a pink elephant, I just put a pink elephant in your head. So it's an almost impossible problem. So it's more something that has to be guided by feel than guided by actual thinking or thought process. But I'm deliberately cultivating experiences, states of mind, locations, activities that will help me get out of my mind. And I know, all of society does that to some extent. In some sense, the people chasing thrills and action sports or flow states or orgasm or any of these states that people really strive to get to, a lot of these are basically just trying to get out of your own head. They're trying to get away from that voice in your head and this overdeveloped sense of self. And at the very least, I do not want my sense of self to continue to develop and become stronger as I get older. I want it to be weaker and more muted, so that I can live much more in present everyday reality and accept nature and the world for what it is, and appreciate it very much as a child would, and then not have to seek happiness through external circumstances, chasing to fit some preconceived notion that I have.
Wow, there's a lot there I want to ask questions on. Is there a difference
that's a tough one. That'll take years. That's not a 6-month habit. That's a 10-year habit.
Do you think there's a difference between turning off or versus suppressing your monkey mind?
Absolutely. Yeah, suppression doesn't work, because when you try to suppress, that's the mind suppressing the mind. That's just you playing games with yourself. So I think it's a very hard problem.